Dave Palumbo here with an RxMuscle news update. As many of you have heard, Laura Bass, IFBB Women's Pro Bodybuilder, has passed at age 49. This is a hard video for me to do because I was friends with her for many years. She was, cut down and still the prime of her life, under 50 years old. I mean, that's just a tragedy when you see someone passing in their 40s or something like that. She was, the first time I ever met her actually was 1994, believe it or not. And I was competing at the Suburban Championships, I believe. Actually, you know what? That's not true. In 1992, I competed at the Suburban Championships as a light heavyweight. First time I ever, actually, it was the first and last time I competed as a light heavyweight. And she won the women's bodybuilding open overall there. A good friend of mine, Janet Marsico, won the novice women's bodybuilding. Remember, back then there was only men's and women's bodybuilding. And I was like, wow, she looks really good. She went to nationals later that year. Actually, no, 1994 then comes around. That's right. And I saw her, this is 2 years later. Now I'm 200, maybe 28 pounds, I think I'm competing at this point. Derek Whitsitt, may he rest in peace as well, no longer with us, wins that show. He shows up out of nowhere. He had to re-qualify. Imagine running into Derek Whitsitt. That's my first, now I'm ready to go to Junior USA for the first time that year. She was giving out the trophies. And when she handed me my trophy, she had this crazy, amazing smile. And she was just like, wow, you look great. And you know what? It didn't even matter that I didn't win. That made me feel so good. And I always remember that. I mean, that look in her eyes, that gleam in her eyes. And she was beautiful. And she was just, she was the perfect combination of beauty with muscle. That's the best way I can put it. Later that season, she went on to do the NPC Nationals and she won the heavyweight class and got a pro card. But she was really, ahead of her time because she really was a women's physique competitor before there was women's physique, to be honest with you. She actually probably could have done, figure almost, but they didn't have that back then. She wound up, I think, switching over to fitness for a couple of years. Of course, if you don't have a gymnastics background, it's hard to do a routine. But, and I think she placed decently too. But really, I mean, women's physique would have been a perfect division for her. But flash forward now 2 years. So I met her in 92, 94, she turned pro and she gave me that really nice compliment. We said 2 words to each other. And then in 96, I went to Dubai. And you guys have heard that story. I've told a lot of Dubai stories. Milos, Sarshev, myself, her, Edgar Fletcher was there. And a couple of European bodybuilders were there. And, we had a great time. She came, she had a boyfriend at the time, Dennis, who I was friends with, or I became friends with. And we had some crazy adventures there. Dennis punched someone out there. It was a wacky weekend. So we all spent a lot of time together. And I got to really know her pretty well then. And we became kind of friends. And I would see her at all the shows after that. And, Dubai wasn't what you see Dubai. You see Dubai nowadays and you're like, oh, yeah, it's like Vegas. It wasn't like that. There was one hotel basically then. And that was it. And there was nothing else. And everyone was telling us how great it was going to be, in 10 years or something like that. And we were all like, yeah, whatever, but that's the way it was. I mean, back then there was nothing there. And they kept telling us they were building. We saw buildings everywhere, but no one could ever imagine what it was going to look like. Here's a picture of us at the Nike store, Milos and Laura, myself. And we were given free sneakers there, believe it or not. They took us there and they said, basically, here's T-shirt, whatever you want. They opened the doors and said, you can have whatever you want. That's when I found out that my sneaker size was 16 and everyone was laughing. Milos was, she was laughing. But we had a really good time there. And it was a memorable weekend because, like I said, I met a very special person and she had, just a light inside her. And many, many, many years later, of course, she, and I started talking again on Facebook, and I even interviewed her back in 2018. You can go back on the site and look her up and see that interview. That was probably the only interview she really did in the modern day, She was huge at rescuing animals. I mean, and she didn't just rescue like dogs and cats. She had rescued camels, believe it or not. Ironically, harkening back to the Middle East again, right? But she had a cat. I think she had 2 camels. Humphrey was one of them, and she had horses, and she just was like, she was living a great life. And when you hear about tragic news of someone passing, and there's rumors. I had reached out to Tanya Knight, because I knew they were friends, and she didn't even know. Interestingly, the way I found out that she had passed was a friend of mine, Joel Goldberg, who had worked for me many years ago. He went to the same high school she did, and there was a message board on Facebook or something like that had posted that she had passed, and we knew her middle name was Corrine. It was Laura Corrine Bass, and that's a very unique name. Not many people have that name. So Joel said, "I know she went to my high school. I think she passed." And so I called Tanya Knight up, and she went and did some digging. And sure enough, because her Facebook page was removed. I don't know who removed it or why it was removed. I don't know if Tanya got a definitive answer, but there certainly was it's speculative that it could have been a suicide. I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't believe she would have committed suicide. I knew her pretty well, and she was not a depressed person as far as I knew, and she had every reason to live. She had a young son, and so it's just the whole thing is so tragic. I mean, the whole story. Whenever you hear these weird things that surround a person's death, it just bothers you. Because like I said, she was such just a good person, and I don't know. I'm having trouble dealing with it. And it's just not. It seems like it's not fair. I don't know when you see people. It's like how I felt when Dallas McCarver died. I'm like, what the hell? This guy. How could this happen? We want to try to make some kind of sense of it all, but really sometimes you just can't. And you can see these pictures. I mean, she did a lot of photo shoots for Flex magazine and Iron Man and Muscle Mag, and I mean, for those of you who weren't around back then or really weren't following the sport, I mean, she was like a pretty face of the sport. She was a good image for the sport. Like I said, it's a shame that that they didn't really have a division for her at the time, because women's bodybuilders were way, way bigger than she was. She was in the same category as like Sharon Bruneau. Sharon, just was a gorgeous girl, had a lot of a great look, and she just couldn't. She just wasn't big enough. And that was Laura's thing too, and I think that she struggled with that because I know she loved to compete. She was very competitive. She loved training and everything like that, and so that can get you a little down sometimes. But I mean, she was very popular back in the 90s and early 2000s. And she's going to be missed. She had a lot of friends. I know she was on Facebook all the time. She was a big Trump supporter. Valentina would have liked that. And, it's when you see something like this happen, and especially in light of what's going on in this world right now with COVID and a lot of depressed people. We lost Luke Sandel last year, also from depression and suicide. And to me, that's it tells me that these are tough times, and that when you need help, guys, reach out. A lot of people tell me on a regular basis that watching the shows that I put out every week really helps them, keeps them in a positive mood, keeps them laughing, smiling, and forgetting about some of the problems. Maybe they lost their job or not doing as well, or whatever the case may be. People are getting sick. Sometimes that's depressing in and of itself, but we got to get through it, man. That's champions find a way. I always say that. And I'm not saying Mr. Olympia champions. I'm talking about people who succeed in life. That's a champion in my book. If you want to be a champion, you got to find a way. You got to find a way to get through it. I find a way to get through every day. When you have 3 young kids, you got to figure out a way to get through every single day. And I really send my condolences out to her family, to her son, and all her friends, because she's going to be missed. And it's a sad day in the bodybuilding world once again. Unfortunately, lately we've been having too many these days, but hopefully, 2021 will not be a foreshadowing of things to come, but rather possibly the last in a string of bad events, and then we're going to see some good stuff start to happen. And the way we do that, guys, is we stay mentally focused on good stuff. Think good. You know, if you're having a bad day, you know what? Shut it down and don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Sometimes I get caught up with the whole social media thing sometimes, and I get like start freaking out and get anxious and am I not doing enough? And what else can I do? And, you know, because I'm very tough on myself, you know, just like a lot of us are. You know, we want to live up to what we think our potential is and what other people think our potential is. So we work hard. And sometimes you got to just take a deep breath. And sometimes when events like this happen, when someone passes, you don't get depressed by it. You just kind of reevaluate, you know, and you start to say, okay, what's important to me? Let me put more time into that. Let me not worry about everything else, because you know what? You can be gone like that in a blink of an eye and it wouldn't matter. No one would care. No one would, you know, people would mourn for a day or so and then they move on with their life. So don't get so caught up in the drama of everyday life. And that's an important message to take home here. Laura, I'm going to miss you a lot. I know all your friends as well. You know, I send my prayers out to your family, to your son. Maybe we could all take a moment of silence and just remember Laura Bass is the great bodybuilder and ambassador to the animal kingdom that she was, because she was a true lover of animals, you know, and being a lover of animals myself, I can relate to that as well. All right, I'm Dave Palumbo with an RxMuscle news update.